Chris isn't that
There's only one way to fix it, is dig
Well,
up
let me tell
the
you,
ground
a week later,
in front of it and then
all set up and done.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the December 12th meeting of the Resource Management and Administration Committee of the Whole of the Grand Traverse County Board. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if the clerk will please call the roll.
Commissioner Gilman,
Here.
Inman,
Here.
Henschel,
Yes.
Lemkool,
Here.
Thomas.
Yep.
Commissioner Max Bauer is excused. Felice,
Present.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Richardson.
Here. Okay, our first item of business is the approval of minutes from November 14th.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the minutes as mailed.
Support. I have a motion by Wheelock, support by Henschel.
Roll call vote, please.
And I guess we had some absences, we need a roll call. First of all, is there any discussion on the minutes? I'll have a roll call vote, please.
Okay, Commissioner Inman,
yes.
Henschel,
Yes.
Lemkool,
Here. Yes.
Thomas,
Yep.
Felice,
Abstain.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman,
Yes.
Chairman Richardson.
Yes. Okay, which brings us to our first opportunity for public comment. And if you could read the rules, please.
Any person shall be permitted to address the meeting of the Board of Commissioners, which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Orders of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
Okay, is there any person wishing to make public comment? Please come up and have a seat at the chair and have at it. Okay, seeing none. We will close public comment now, and I will say that, public opportunities for public comment will be offered throughout the meeting as we discuss various issues. Okay, the next item of business is the approval of the agenda.
Move as presented.
Support. Support. Okay, I have a motion by Inman, support by Henschel. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. No special orders of business. So next brings us to the consent calendar.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval is approved by a single committee action depending on the consent calendar. Adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. 1, T.C. Tallis Board Report for September and October 2012. 2, Grand Traverse Conservation District Report for November and October 2012. 3, Resource Recovery Managers Report. 4, Road Commission Report. B, approval. 1, Employment Assistant Program Renewal for 2013. 2, 2013 Employment Training Day Event. 3, Letters of Agreement regarding 2013 health insurance. 4, Committee appointments, correction to the Economic Development Corporation appointments of 12/28/2011.
Okay, having heard the consent calendar, is there any member of the public who would like to have any item removed for further discussion?
Remove the road commission report.
Okay, so we'll make a note for A4 to be removed from the consent calendar. Any other member of the public wishing to have anything removed? Take it back to the board.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of A4.
Second.
Okay, motion by Inman, support by Henschel. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Henschel?
Yes.
Lemkool?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Fleece?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Chairman Richardson?
Yes. Okay, that brings us to items removed from the consent calendar, which is item A4, the Road Commission report. And I see we have Mr. Mark McCullough and Jim Cook, is it? You want to come on up?
Mark McKellar, Chairman of the Road Commission Board.
Jim Cook, Manager of the Road Commission.
We appreciate the opportunity to have it removed so that we can address you together. This is the first opportunity we've had to address this board with our new manager, Mr. Cook, and I thank you, everybody had it. Thanks, Larry. Nobody wants to hear me, Larry.
Yes, we do. Well, it's for our broadcasting. We
Okay.
get the microphone close.
Very good. Well, I just wanted to take an opportunity to officially introduce our new manager, Mr. Cook. He assumed his responsibilities on the 26th of November, and I can tell you right now that not only are things moving smoothly, but they're progressing. The staff, the crew, the board, we're extremely pleased with what we've already experienced with Mr. Cook, the sense of calm and order that he's brought, and his ability to listen to the community and to the board, the staff, administration, the crew. It's been phenomenal. So, and we agreed this year that we do something that hadn't been done in several years, which is we put out a report to the community, kind of wrapping up what we did in 2012 and looking forward. I'm not going to recite it. It'll be available on our website and linked through our Facebook for the public, and we'll have copies at the Road Commission office if people would like to pick it up. And we're going out to township meetings, and those that we're attending, we're leaving some behind for the folks there as well. But the highlights basically are, there's a letter that I have in there as the outgoing chairman stressing some of the most important things that we accomplished this last year. And one of the things that we did in early 2012 was, and I note this, is that we changed the way we plow the roads with our crew. We had the majority of our crew coming in the morning and then leaving about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There was a gap, and then we had a light crew come into the evening. That changed last year. We didn't make a lot of noise about it, but it was an immediate effect. The next following 2 storms we had, you could tell that we had crews out earlier in the morning, beat the buses, beat the rush hour traffic in the morning. Then later in the afternoon, instead of having a gap, we had overlap, and then we had the later crew come in, and they were out ahead of it about 3 o'clock up into that 6 o'clock rush hour, and that really, it got ahead again of the buses, or at least ahead of the rush hour traffic going home. And we know that invariably it snows between 3 and 6 p.m. here. It really does. So that was a big, significant service improvement. Then we had some 2012 safety upgrades that we completed. We had some 2012 major projects we completed, which was some heavier construction, some local road improvements with the townships. 2012 significant activities, I will report capital improvements. We purchased 2 trucks, and these trucks, when they're fully equipped, have about $450,000 of equipment on them fully. And then we also went to narrowband FCC radio, and we have, they're digital, and what's going to happen is eventually we're going to get the GPS software, which will tell us you know, the speed of the trucks, where they're at, blade up, blade down, amount of material being laid, very efficient, and we'll work with our crew and this equipment to match the 2 things together to get the best outcome. We have Durapatching, which has been going on. That's a process that's not really new, but we've been doing more of it. Our guys are becoming more proficient with it. And what it means is simply, instead of going out and putting potash down and just filling up that hole or coal ash, Durapatch, you can actually put a Durapatch down and the road around it will break before the Durapatch does. And then we had our 2 emergency responses this year, which was the dam breach and what we had to do out on Garfield and with the bridges and monitoring those for the long hours. And then, of course, the storm, I think, on March 3rd, although that's normal course for us, that still was an emergency response because of the magnitude of the storm. Looking ahead, we have our safety grants that we've submitted. We haven't received any information on those, but we actively seek grant monies to bring them back into our community. We have approved major projects right now. Holiday Road. The BIA did supply a grant. That road will be a major reconstruction and will break ground this spring. North Long Lake Road, that's getting taken care of too, to the county line into the section we finished about 2 years ago. The two most important things that we have going on now in the 2013 is just in the November board meeting, it's in your RMA report, that we dropped the threshold from 75% cost to the township to a 50% cost to the township. So it's a 50-50 match on chip seal, sealants, fog sealants. That is a major component of asphalt maintenance, and we have to do that. We've done last couple of years, we've struggled, but we've actually completed a percentage of our roads to maintain them. But now we have a plan. So we dropped the match threshold significantly for the townships, and now we're looking at what we call a mix of fixes. I'd encourage the board to come on January to the MTA luncheon. We're going to have a presentation. We're hosting that luncheon. That presentation is going to be put on by John Rogers, one of our employees that spent a lot of time with this. It's about a 45-minute presentation, and it's called Mix of Fixes, and it literally shows the condition of our roads, where that inventory needs to be in the next 3 to 5 years, how we do it, putting down about $14,000 a mile rather than $1.4 million a mile to completely replace it. So it's a matter of taking care of what you have. So we think that with matching funds, we're going to be in pretty good shape for some of these. That brings me to the last issue, Lafrenia Road. Lafrenia Road, as you know, is a major issue, especially now with the new county health department. That building's going to, or that road's going to deteriorate at an increasingly rapid rate because of the traffic now from the health department and because of the newer roads. So what's going to happen is we thought we could just go through and do a mix of fixes on that, and we can. And we're going to try to do that. There's an opportunity possibly to do a complete reconstruction on it, but we don't have the money at this time. But we do think we have the funds to do the fix on the road to make it safe for the motoring public. And what we're going to do is we are going to come back with hard numbers to this board, and we're going to ask for some money. Don't know where you're going to get it from, but we're going to ask just the same. And we're going to also talk to Garfield Township. Chuck Horn, supervisor's been out there. He knows it. He sat through the Mix of Fix presentation. He thinks it's a logical next step. So with that, if Mr. Cook would like to say a few words about his new position and what's going on, I'll step back.
Well, I'm happy to report that this is week number 3 for me at the Grand Traverse County Road Commission. I have to tell you that I'm very, very impressed with the staff. They're very qualified. They work well as a team, and so we're going to work really hard to take the Road Commission to the next level. And because I come from the private sector, we're going to, I have a different view of how things ought to operate, and so for us, our focus is going to be more on client satisfaction, and that's not just making sure our roads are plowed and that we're maintaining roads and doing those things, but it's also communicating and building relationships with all of you and with the folks in our community. And so one thing that I'm doing is when somebody sends a letter to me and tells me that they have an issue, you know, at the end of the day, it's my personal responsibility to respond to those folks, you know, one-on-one, just like they responded. They reached out to me with either a letter or a phone call, and so you're going to see things done a little differently. To add to what Mark had said, we have a great staff, and we're working just over the last couple of weeks. We're really assessing just how organized we are and what we can do to improve our organizational structure, but also really to have a planned approach for maintaining our roads. And so you'll hear about it with the mix of fixes, but then you'll also see it with a truly up-to-date asset management plan. And I look forward to working with each of you.
Any questions, Jason?
Well, I was going to pull this from the report as well. I think that this board probably shares your confidence and is looking forward to some positive results from the road commission right now. It's an uphill battle, and quite so in a couple of particular locations, Lafreniere, Holiday, you know, those kind of areas in particular. The reason, and I'm glad that I'm confident, and I feel really good about the board, the road commission right now. The one thing that drew my attention was a mention. We appreciate the dam implementation team's action to establish a working group to assure the project moves forward timely. Please apply appropriate level of critical analysis on their results. As we have seen recently, it bears a second look.
Cass Road Bridge, that's what you're referring to?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, you're going to get that second look and that third look. The press has been, because of a grant that we've received that has a time trigger on it of $3 million. I don't believe that there's any reason why, if we have intent to build a bridge, that we can't explain that to these folks and potentially get a hold on those funds to apply the funds in our community. So I don't want to be in a situation where we hastily make a $3 million error and place it maybe in the wrong place. So,
And that's exactly my concern, is that there's this carrot dangling out there that makes us rush forward into what, though? And, you know, we find we make mistakes when we rush forward to try to meet these deadlines for money. We want safety. You know, we want the best results for our county citizens, and we've already seen what happens when we leap first, so to speak.
at the Grand Vision Transportation Networking meeting a week ago, it was presented that not only would the Cass Road corridor have a traffic study done, a model, but the Hammond-Hartman Bridge corridor have also the same study. And I don't want to use the word study, it's more of a, Jim, what's the word I'm looking for?
They're going to do a traffic study or traffic
model,
analysis.
yeah. And they're also, they being this group with Thales, with their modeling software, going to look at the Beitner corridor as well. So there are 3 potential opportunities there. No bridge, bridge at Cass, bridge at Hartman Hammond.
Does one of those include the recommendation by Commissioner Thomas? Dickey's plan.
Dickey's plan. I believe, in essence, yes, because my understanding was it was a connector off of the end of Cass Road, which would go to Beitner. So is that not the Dickey plan?
With no bridges.
No bridges?
No bridges. So no plan, or no bridge, Cass Bridge, which, by the way, people ought to know, it's not being proposed to be at the same location. It'll actually move north, and I think that's into the edge of the nature preserve or into the sensitive area. And then there's again that's been bandied about for years is the actual Hammond-Hartman road. And if people are interested, they can come down and look at those designs for the Hammond Hartman. We have them, they were paid for. We have the bridges, specs, we have everything. So we're gonna get the traffic model on all three. And it was recommended, and I believe that was the plan, right?
That is the plan.
Yeah. The MTA meeting is January 3rd, correct? Thursday, the first Thursday of January?
I believe it might be moved to the following. I'm not sure, Larry. It's not, I talked to Deb Hunt today, and I don't know exactly the date, but we'll get that out to everybody just as soon as we get a firm date, coordinate with her and Chuck, but I think it's going to depend on the Elks Club and the availability of the room, because it's going to be, we anticipate a very large crowd.
And then also you spoke about March 3rd this year. And how long did it take the road crew to do the cleanup on, not the snow, but the brush and everything else?
What we did on the brush, probably a month, seriously. And then there was, we did some subcontract work for Garfield Township for a short spell that would be within that month. We actually have crews out today taking down some very significant trees along our main corridors. We spent a little more money this year cutting back some of those areas. And I think we have an opportunity to work with utilities and other organizations that are out there doing right-of-way clearing and maybe do some cooperative things.
You know, to reiterate maybe what Gilman was saying, when you guys are looking at those studies, traffic counts, traffic studies, back when they redid the Chums Corners intersection, that road was closed for quite a while. And people that lived west, you still had the traffic coming down Beitner, but when they got to Williams Road, the people that lived west took Williams Road and went on to Interlochen and wherever. The people that were south of Chums Corners at the bottom of the hill, the road commission at first wasn't going to do anything to improve the Hoosier Valley Road that comes out on Vance.
Right.
Well, they soon discovered after just a couple, 3 days that they needed to obviously do something because the traffic was so heavy on that course. So they went in there and graded it and smoothed it and dumped some gravel and made it passable for that duration. But I'm sure somebody probably has some traffic counts, but that worked pretty smooth. And of course now you have the intersection. But Dick Thomas's idea, by far, particularly in the area of no money available and with no strings attached, that's a simple fix to a problem, and it's already really been proven that it'll work. It would work even better because you would have two roads instead of one, see?
Absolutely, Larry. I think we have to look at all these options. And quite frankly, not that we're going to have another situation like we did with the Boardman River, but when you have to close a bridge on Garfield Road, that is an actual bridge, and then you go down to Beitner and Keystone by Rapids, that's double tubes. And South Airport Road's double tubes. And it doesn't matter, they don't have to blow out. All we have to do is have water over the road and they're impassable for vehicular traffic. So where do people go? So we really do have to have not only a road that is a high and dry like Dick is proposing,
Right.
but potentially another avenue across the river, but it has to be high enough that that never becomes an issue in terms of those tubes being, those, because if you look, they actually dip down. They not go across. It's not a matter of erosion or losing the tube. It's a matter of the water over the road, impassability.
Once the next two dams are removed, though, I think your problem will cease to exist there.
I think that's a possibility. I mean, that's, yes. I agree.
Just a quick point in regard to the North Long Lake Road. I made some comments at your meetings and other meetings about the fact that, 80% of the people that drive that road are not Grand Traverse County residents, but they still drive past my house and past my business every day.
You're putting a toll booth up in front of your place, right?
That sounds like a plan. I did speak with Jim Johnson last week because they were surveying in regard to that intersection, just west of my, or just south of my shop, about, different designs of that type of thing. And the only thing that I ask is, because of the fact that I front approximately a half a mile of that road right there, I would certainly like to have input before such time as a plan is drawn and finalized for how you're going to do that intersection.
I think we always take the input of the property owners up and down the road. They should,
We, like I said, between my dad and I, we own almost a half a mile of frontage there. I'd like to have a little bit of input.
we promise not to skip yours this time.
We certainly did the last time.
Two quick items. One is, I think we should all see that presentation that they have. I witnessed it at the last meeting, and it's a great answer to how we can take care of our roads for less money, and he does a good job. The other thing is, and this is for you, Jim, this is just a small complaint, but the light at the top of the hill on 37, at Hilltop Road, has been intermittent or off for almost 6 months now. I don't know whose light it is. I told them over to Cherryland, it probably is their light, but it doesn't have to be. But whoever it is, tell them to come out and fix it, because this is the time of the year that we need streetlights.
You're talking
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
on top of Hilltop there?
Yep.
That's Blair Township, that's Blair Township's light.
But
Yeah.
it's up to the power company to take care of it.
Right, but what happens, and I had the same thing at Norton, the light's intermittent like it was, and I noticed it Monday night coming from Mayfield. It's the sensor on the light. Car comes down, the lights hit it, the street light goes up.
But this one's off a lot anyway.
Right, but
Without any
it's all
traffic.
caused by the sensor. They replaced the bulb at Norton, they replaced the head, and they decided to
Yeah.
replace the sensor, and the light stays
Yeah.
on all the time.
People depend on those streetlights this time of the year.
But I'll report that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Dick, I'm going to take that off my list, okay?
Mark, I wanted to thank you and the rest of the road commissioners for the continued service you do to our county, and it's one of the more thankless jobs, and we thank you for what you do. Just a quick feedback for you, Jim. My family business is just up the road from the road commission, and one of your employees was in talking about you already.
Oh. well, I
Very
hope it-
positive and
oh,
optimistic. They told me about some of the things you've done and some of the things you're saying, and they are optimistic. So a little feedback for you.
I
Keep doing
appreciate
what you're
that.
doing.
What, Mr. Chair, if I may, one last thing is, I think that it's due that Mr. Jim Maitland served 12 years as a member of the board, and that, I just want to acknowledge his service to our community. I mean, it takes a lot of effort to want to be on a board for 12 years. I mean, you all know how difficult it can be, how many nights and traveling and everything you're doing, and he did this for 12 years, and we appreciate his service to our community. I just wanted that to be on the record, that we appreciated his service to our community. So, and we will be recognizing him Friday at our holiday luncheon.
Very good. Mark, just real quickly, we do the same thing over here for some of our major appointments and people, county commissioners that serve that will be leaving at the end of the year, as well as the road commission appointments. We've been fairly consistent in giving them a dedication plaque of their time and service with Grand Traverse County. So we'll also be doing that at our December 26th meeting here at 7 p.m. So we've asked Jim to come on board, and the board will give some recognition to him for his 12 years.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Jason, then Dick.
Move to receive the report.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed?
Thank you. Just one item on your newsletter.
Yep.
You got road commission staff you might want to like put a bold part after staff and put Road Commission Board of Directors or something like that, and then follow through with Mark McKellar and Carl Brown, so distinguish the difference between a staff and Board of Directors.
Appreciate it. Definitely not.
And then, and normally I don't know if you got it on here or not, I didn't see it, we usually have like a contact information, you know, if you need to contact the Road Commission, here's the phone number and email or whatever.
Well, Larry, if you look in the middle of the
Is
page,
it
we
in there?
put Jim's name and phone number
Okay.
right now.
Mr. Cook's phone number, okay, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Probably my home address, too.
Yeah, all right, that's good.
And, oh, his cell phone number too. All
right, that's good.
Absolutely.
One thing we're all sure of, you don't plow the roads, we get the calls.
That's true. Hey, thanks for coming tonight.
Thanks, guys.
We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, this is to our department action items, and the first one is acceptance of a excuse me, acceptance of a donation from the staff of Fox Motors for our Soldiers Relief Program. Dave, did you want to?
Sure. This is an item that you need to take action on. Individuals and groups can't just take donations on behalf of the county. And this will allow, and this basically was Fox Motors, Grand Traverse, and Mercedes-Benz of Traverse City donated $7,600.71 to the Veterans Office. Their employees planned it all out, and the only thing you have to do to, then this is to go to the Soldiers and Sailors Relief Fund, and they'll distribute those resources, but it requires your approval as a board.
So moved.
Support. I moved by Wheelock, supported by Fleece. Any further discussion on this? And then just obviously,
Obviously, it's one.
the county thanks Fox Motors and their employees for doing this, and it's a really nice thing, especially this time of year. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, next we have Facilities Management wants to buy a couple trucks. Danny?
Danny Brown, Facilities Director, Grand Traverse County. Trucks. We've got some pretty bad trucks that these would replace. And I might add that we also sent local packets out. We sent 5 packets out. And no local vendor called us, talked to us about it or anything. It's just kind of strange, I think. This Signature Ford is where we've gotten the last couple of trucks from.
Right.
And they're noted as the biggest governmental police department types trucks, or cars, in that case, in the state. So that's, you can see the price difference. This Whiteside Chevrolet in Ohio, I don't know who they are actually, but they did submit a bid, so you can see what it is.
And you're going to assure the commissioners that the old trucks will be disposed of?
Yes, they will. Either, just a little story, we had a stake truck 3 or 4 years ago that we put on this auction site for counties. And we were dumbfounded. We thought we'd get $600 for it. We got $4,600 for it. And it was a person out of Arizona that actually bid that amount of money. This truck, I wouldn't have driven it down the street personally. But, so you never know. Yes, I will dispose of the other 2, of course.
Danny, how do these people request a bid packet or bid specs, or do you just publish the specs?
We publish them, and then we send them out to people.
So this Ohio people
Well, that one, they probably picked that up from the paper. We advertise this in the paper, and it's also on our website as well.
Thank you.
Please.
I would move that we authorize the purchase of the Ford E-150 cargo van without the ladder rack from Signature Ford. Total purchase price to be $18,720.
Support.
Support by Benchel? Thomas? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. And then the stick truck?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to authorize the purchase of a F-350 stake truck with plow package from Signature Ford for a total purchase price of $35,696.
Support.
Support by Fleece, motion by Wheelock. Yes, go ahead.
I'm not sure which truck we're replacing, but if some of you may remember, about 4 years ago, we received notice that the stake truck was beyond repair. A certain company that I'm quite involved with did some significant repairs on the truck rack, and we got 3 or 4 years out of it with a very minimal expenditure, but that truck was in pretty sorry shape, and there wasn't, to be real honest with you, there was no one else in town that would touch it.
No, they would not.
So,
Yeah, the sander sets on those trucks and,
salt spreaders,
after 5, 6
spreaders
years.
on those flatbeds are just terrible.
So,
All right, any more discussion?
Just one question. So this is coming out of the 2013 budget? Because it does, okay. All right.
yes.
Yeah, by the time we buy them.
Yeah, it's 14 weeks away.
All right.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Brings us to the prosecuting attorney and staffing plan.
Evening, Bob.
Billboard Bob.
Famous Bob Cooney.
Famous Billboard Bob.
He looks just like his picture.
Bob Cooney, Deputy Civil Counsel. And I brought this to your attention because back in October, I had indicated to the board that I was making some staffing plan changes, and I wanted you to be aware of what those changes were because they do impact our personnel budget substantially. And at that time, I had indicated that I wanted to eliminate the Deputy Civil Counsel, and what I can tell you is after soliciting resumes for a couple of months, I hadn't received anyone that really had any resumes from folks who had both substantial criminal experience as well as municipal law experience. And then at the beginning of November, I got a resume from Chris Forsythe, who is someone who has 4 years of experience as a Wayne County prosecutor. He's tried a number of serious felony cases. In addition, he was with the Troy City Attorney's Office for, I believe, 5 years, and he's currently with Flood Langtot, which is a law firm in Troy, and he was brought in to head up their municipal law department, and that was because of his experience in municipal law in Troy. So I finally found someone who had the significant experience that I was looking for and had kind of given up on, and so I know back in October, the board indicated that it felt that I appreciated the fact that the board felt I should be given quite a bit of latitude in selecting my staff. And in this case, what I'm asking is for the board to allow me to bring Chris in as a Deputy Civil Counsel. I had already made the offer to bring him as an Attorney 3 at the top of that pay scale. This would be a couple $1,000s more at the beginning of his employment. However, there are legacy costs because the Deputy Civil Counsel position moves up about $13,000 higher than the Attorney 3. So, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to get the attention of the chairman.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to let the board know that I did speak with Bob on this matter and encouraged him to come to the board and asked him to move forward with this recommendation. And he did indicate to me that this still does conform with the overall budget that was established for the prosecutor's office. And it was just my personal opinion at that point in time, but I wanted him to bring it to the board, is that whatever organizational structure he felt would best fit his operation over there based on activity and how he wanted to structure his internal department, I would be in favor of. So I'd like to make a motion at this time, to approve the reinstatement of a Deputy Civil Counsel for the Grand Traverse County Prosecutor's Office, beginning January 1, 2013.
I'll support. Support by Longcole. Commissioner Fleets? Do you have anything?
I've also talked to Mr. Cooney about the organization structure he's done in the prosecutor's office, or plans to do, and I'm totally in favor of this motion.
Great.
Commissioner Gilman, then Wheeler.
And presumably, he brings a skill set that's going to advantage us, or your office anyhow, better than a person who'd be filling that, the level 3 position.
You know, he has quite a bit more experience than I probably did coming in to that position over 7 years ago. In fact, he has about the same number of years as an attorney as I did when I began as when I was promoted to deputy civil counsel. I think he is going to be a huge asset to the office. In Troy, they had a deductible of $500,000, and so they were handling just about all of their claims internally. And so 1983 actions and some of those types of cases, a lot of employment cases that we would not ordinarily handle here because of our lower deductible, you know, he has that experience. And so, you know, I think that he will probably be able to take on some of these cases that maybe we've passed on in previously, where we could save the county, you know, every time we take on a lawsuit, we probably save the county about $75,000, as we did with the medical examiner's suit. You know, I can't say how much that might have cost the county eventually, but, you know, I think a lot of times you can assume it's going to be our deductible amount, so.
Commissioner Wheeler?
Bob, I see in your note that you have the money in your budget. I have no problem with that, and I certainly have no problem with you moving things around. I just wanted to ask Jen if she agreed with the scoring as far as the level 3 payment for this gentleman coming in.
I really can't say. I haven't seen his resume, but I'm sure Bob. I don't have any problem with this, but I can't personally say.
As the chief law enforcement officer in our community, I think it's a critical piece that he has the best staff that he has. We already saw where we had one department head that we hired that wasn't able to complete, but we hired because he hired somebody to come in and take his place, or to be his assistant. When he got sick, he was able to have somebody take his place. I think it's a critical piece that you have that backup piece in any department, that somebody else can step in and be able to take on and understand the department without having to go outside and trying to find somebody. And I commend you for finding somebody, or him finding us, so to speak, to give you that too deep leadership, which is a critical piece, I think, in every department.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Now to the administrator.
Okay.
Policy on Commissioner Technology is the first item.
Yeah, Commissioner Henschel brought to our attention that we were going to be discussing this in the budget to talk about technology for commissioners, and without going into a long story about all the pros and cons of how you should do it or how you could do it, it's become a trend in the industry to be encouraging bring your own device, BYODs. Policies in corporate America and in public sector now are starting to go to stipends and bring your own device policies. And in this case, you know, the commission, it's difficult to enforce any kind of, you know, you're going to give up paper and take electronics in its place policy, but you could, you know, have some kind of policy in place as you adopt something like this. If you were to provide a stipend to commissioners, I would suggest the number, I put it in this recommendation, of $750 to be paid at the beginning of each commissioner's term. And that would cover their paper and if they wanted to print it out, and it would cover their printers, if they wanted to buy a printer, if they wanted to buy a laptop, they could have a laptop. If they wanted an iPad or an iPod or whatever they wanted to buy, it takes some technology, email addresses and high-speed internet access and all that to to actually go beyond the paper that you receive. You still need that stuff. So at any rate, I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's actually a pretty good idea. And, I throw it out there, and I don't know, I think Commissioner Hensel probably has some things to say about it.
Well, I just want to reiterate we kind of started this policy with is the cost savings, that if our staff isn't taking their time putting packets together, that's a cost savings in the cost of the paper. And Dean did a study and, a couple different ways to look at it. But the idea is, first of all, a cost savings, but also just a leadership thing in the community, encouraging people by setting an example. And that doesn't mean Dick has to give up his paper, but those that choose to, it would enable them, because I don't take packets. I haven't taken them from day one. I requested staff not to give me packets, and the county has a savings because of that. Now, luckily, the county IT had an iPad I could use, but otherwise, I would have borne that cost myself. So it just enables commissioners in the future. It doesn't affect me personally because I won't be here, but I'd like to have a policy that enables commissioners to set the example of having an electronic device to read the packets.
Mr. Redmond?
Well, I do like the overall theme of the recommendation, and I know that in the past it's been discussed at the board level that if we come up with some kind of technology advantage for commissioners, if they choose to accept it, that it be voluntary. Some of us prefer written packets where we can make personal notes to it, and some of us prefer just having it emailed to us and then having it downloaded into something that Commissioner Henschel has. And when I sat at the Northern Michigan University Board of Trustees, they went paperless, and what they would do is they would email you, for those folks that had email, and there are some of us that don't have computers at home or the ability to capture data, that they would electronically send us the agenda, and then when we got there, everybody had a laptop on their desk, and then we could just follow the agenda by virtue of the laptop, and it was also presented on a screen. So it was something different, and it worked out really well. I sort of like this policy because it has a lot of flexibility, because I guess one of my biggest gripes is when Chris sends over stuff, like for commissioners to know. Like I'll meet with Dave as chairman and with Linda, and I said, we really need to get all this information out. I check with them daily, and a lot of stuff, important stuff comes out that may not be packet related, but we need to get this information out to all the commissioners so they're aware of everything that's going on. It's part of my responsibility. So she emails stuff out, there's attachments, and I had this habit of printing out that stuff. And along with all the other boards and commissions that we're assigned to as commissioners, we get that stuff sent to us, and I end up printing a lot of stuff out as reminders or whatever to be prepared for meetings. And so I'm slamming through paper and ink cartridges through retail outlets in Traverse City that are really expensive. I mean, for me to buy ink cartridges that are black and have some color options to it or whatever, I'm dropping $65, $70, and it's surprising how fast those ink cartridges go. So, any event, I like this stipend thing. That way we don't have to submit bills and those kinds of things, and we can use this as if this is just going to be like for like every election cycle. Is that what you're saying? Every election cycle? And for that would be just 2 years. I think that would compensate us for either having a notebook, or for those that want paper, the printing option at home would help cover the paper and the ink cartridges. And I personally am up here enough, and I know Dick stops in here every Friday or whatever. I would be happy with us not mailing the packet if we're going to have, for those of us that would prefer to have a paper set for our meetings of the call. And according to our board book, we all pick up our board book at the end of the month. I'm happy just to stop in, because I'm always checking my mailbox every week, and just pick up the packet and not have it mailed home and save on the postage. So, I have absolutely no problem in saving on the postage as well for the county and making it as an option for each commissioner which way they want to do that. And the stipend thing seems to be really reasonable.
Dick?
Well, yeah, I don't want anything mailed to me. If I can't get here to pick it up, then I'm not doing my job. Remember years ago, the sheriff used to deliver our board book?
Yeah.
And I said, wait a minute, you're taking a deputy and to come to my house with a book? No thanks.
City still does it that way.
Yep.
It's crazy.
My question is more of a timing issue as to which board is the one that would decide. Would we decide that here is this board for future boards, or do we wait until we seat the new board and then let them make that decision? Because that's my question.
That's sort of my feeling about it.
So I have just a couple questions. One is exactly what you're saying. I think this should be delayed until January when the new board
That's
is
fine.
seated.
I'm fine with that.
But the other thing that I'd like to have some clarification of here is what portion of this becomes foiable? Because that becomes a little bit of an issue if we have to.
It's foible now.
It is foible right now as far as our packet is. But if we start interacting more electronically with other commissioners or with the office, then it becomes foible. And, we all want to make sure that we don't get involved in issues with the Open Meetings Act and all of those kind of things because, so I think there has to be a certain amount of policy that has to come with that. And Mr. Cooney's going to have to help us with some of that. But, I have no problem with the idea of the stipend if you want a iPad or you want a laptop or whatever you want to use, if you're more comfortable, if you have one or the other, I have no problem with that. I read my packet, comes in on my email. I also always have a paper packet because I write in all of the margins and the corners. But, I think it's certainly worth looking at, but I believe it is a decision that should be made by the new commissioners that are seated in January and have discussion about how many of them are interested.
Yeah, that's
Commissioner Gilman?
One of the, you bring up an interesting point about open meetings and what is foiable. Obviously, it is all foible at this point right now, but one of the things that, when you make this decision, and if you wind up putting this off until the next board is seated, take this into consideration, the appearance of the ability to communicate amongst each other while you're working. I don't know how the public will view that. In the open meetings area, that is a big no-no, is communicating on the board between members on the board. And but as far as the money thing, it makes sense. The not including the printing costs, just the postage cost of sending it out, it's $100 a year per commissioner.
Right.
We're talking $375 a year here, and then you've got, of course, the printing costs. And from a management standpoint, I remember the picture in the paper of Commissioner Max Bauer's boxes that she was sitting on.
Right.
So
We've all done that.
I'm willing to entertain it if somebody brings it up.
Just a final note that when stuff goes out, we send it out as information, and we aren't into. I've never seen a situation where we get into a dialogue on the internet in between commissioners. I've never seen that, and we know that Bob has had training on that, and that is not what he's advised us to do. And other commissioners might send out information to commissioners, but it's just information only, and there's no expectations of a response, nor should we be responding back. So that's all part of the training that Bob does annually. So I think we all understand our role, and I think we should have continued training annually on that.
Okay, so it's the pleasure of the board that the new commissioner can take this up next month if they want to.
Do we want to put it on our January 2nd agenda?
No, we
Yeah,
got
it would have to be January RMA meeting.
Commissioner Fleece and then Henschel.
Well, when you make the decision, I think it ought to be made by the new commission, but when you make the
I'm fine with that.
decision, consider people like myself, that I don't have internet capabilities in my home, even where I live.
They're still using some.
So we have one of those newfangled deals, I forget what they call it.
Blanket and the bonfire?
Yeah, but it's similar to what Rob's using. And the other morning at 6:30, I see the wife's got it in the dining room window. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she says, "I'm trying to get a signal." And it's supposed to be one of these electronic deals that goes through the satellite or something. It doesn't even work where we're at. So, number one, I think you need to consider that. I won't be around, so I don't care. Number two, I think for 45 cents and having the U.S. Postal Service deliver our packets is a prudent way to do business if we're going to have packets, or the commissioners that are going to get packets and want it that way, because look at the price of gas, the pollution, the use of the fossil fuel for 7 commissioners to drive down to get a packet. You know, it doesn't make any common sense there. So just a little note on my part.
They're always happy to see me.
Mr. Chairman,
No, I know, that's different. If you, like you and Larry have, maybe have business.
we're in here a lot,
around.
so, yeah. Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. We defer this agenda item to the January RMA meeting,
Support.
2013.
Commissioner Henschel?
You know, I can appreciate you guys being afraid of technology, I understand that, but this is what happened last time we talked about this over 6 months ago. You guys deferred it to October, and here we are, 2 months late from October to talk about this, and you want to defer it again. You know,
We're only talking 30 days.
my vote counts now.
Yes, it does.
I was elected to represent my constituents now, not to kick a can down the road, so I know you guys will probably pass it tonight, that you're going to kick the can and you're just going to drop the ball next year, and that's fine, but I'm going to vote no.
Okay. Any further discussion on this? Everybody ready to vote? Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Lemkool,
No.
Yes.
Thomas, Please,
Yes.
Wheelock,
Yes.
Gilman,
No.
Inman,
Yes?
Henschel,
No.
Chairman Richardson.
Yes. Okay, so motion carries, so the new commission can take it up next month sometime. Okay, that brings us to, I guess, your report, Mr. Benda.
That's simple.
Yes, you have a report in your packet. I'm not going to go through it in
I can handle that. What do you want?
detail, but I would like to point out a couple of things. Just on our horizon, the Benzie County Board of Commissioners is looking to sign an agreement with us to provide veteran services to Benzie County residents. We already do that. A lot of those residents come to us anyway. This would be similar to the one we have in Leelanau County, and the Grand Traverse County Veterans Committee will be meeting on December 20th to discuss this proposal, and they'll be forwarding a full recommendation to you probably next month. But it's looking to me, after having a conversation with Chuck Lurchin about this, that we have nothing to lose by doing this. They have a millage for veteran services in Benzie County. They're not getting the full impact of services that they should be getting. These veterans aren't getting the services that they should be, and they're willing to pay for it here. We still have, it wouldn't increase our caseload. We might have a small bubble at the beginning, but it really wouldn't put a huge increase in our caseload, because all those guys are already on our caseload. We could just do more for them, and they would go up there once a week, and they would get office hours once a week, and I guess they've got a pretty disorganized way of doing it right now, and they're looking for something that we can perhaps provide. And they're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of about a $30,000 revenue to the county to pick up those services for them. So that'll be coming. There'll be a lot more details next month.
Okay, just a minute. Commissioner Fleece had a comment.
I've sat on the Veterans Board for years now, and we, the board, have encouraged Chuck to reach out to Benzie County, perhaps Wexford. But Benzie County, for example, 4 hours a week on Mondays for the veterans. And that's not right, nor is it fair to treat our veterans that way. And presently, we do Leelanau County, and that contract's between, I believe, $35,000 and $40,000 a year. Like Dave said, it's going to be probably in the $30,000 range, depending on the load, and Chuck will evaluate that after the first year. I think that it's an excellent move, and the governor, of course, likes regionalization, and so if we reached out, Wexford has a better situation, but there's still areas, Antrim's another one, that our Veterans Board, whoever gets the seat on that next, ought to encourage the activity to contract with those counties, because we already have the clinics here, not only a medical clinic, and they're hoping to get a full-blown clinic here, and they're working towards that goal. We have like a mental health unit for the veterans here, and we have one other one, I can't think of, new one that they just added. And it's a lot of federal dollars come through those clinics, and the employment at the clinics and what they put into this community is tremendous. So commissioners are going to be here after the first of the year. Keep that in mind.
Commissioner Linfold, and we will.
Yeah, I keep hearing about the veterans in the state of Michigan getting shortchanged on a lot of the benefits that we've got. My question is how are we doing in Grand Traverse County?
Well, it's not a matter of, it's increased. We do well in Grand Traverse County, but you got to consider where we are in the nation. We're number 47 out of 50.
In the state?
No. The state of Michigan is number 47 out of 50 in the nation. And you ought to see the bucks. I mean, Michigan gets some dollars, but nothing compared to what some of these states get. And Jason Allen, of course, is sitting in kind of a pivotal position right now, and hopefully Jason is going to be able to reverse some of that, because those are big dollars. You look at the veterans unemployment in Grand Traverse County, it's in the 20s here today, you know. And we need to do what we can for the veterans. You know, it's and you don't notice them really. You don't notice them, but like I'm coming to a meeting last summer, nice warm summer night. Motorcycle pulls up at 37 and South Airport Road, and I didn't pay too much attention. We go around the corner, and he's beside me, and I thought, geez, his one pant leg's flapping quite a bit. Well, I got to looking, and he obviously was probably a veteran. At least he had the shirt on, and he was minus a leg. I go to the Jamboree down in Manton occasionally, and there's a gentleman down there. You'd never know he was handicapped, but he's lost both his legs at the knees, and he dances, like I say, it took me probably 6 months to realize he was a double amputee. But some of these guys with the new prosthetics and stuff they've got really come along. But then, of course, there's some of them that are really banged up bad, and it takes them years to even get back into the mainstream.
But my question is how are we doing here? You know, so have we ever benchmarked what our needs are and what our ability is, and could we get a lot more, or are we doing really, really well?
No.
So, and that's my question.
We're doing good, but the problem is, like right now, we have a 30-day waiting list, and that, to me, is inexcusable. This board here earlier, and I happened to be absent at that meeting, but Chuck came in and explained, and the board authorized, I think it was a 0.6 FTE.
Right.
And if we take on Benzie, I would think we're probably going to have to add maybe a little more FTE, but and get it down to like the 14 days.
Larry, I would say that the last report that Chuck provided us, the waiting list had actually dropped, the waiting time had dropped a little bit, so it's like 22 to 30 now, instead of over 30. It's not good, but it's better than it was, let's put it that way.
Yeah, but picture yourself, you're a veteran, you've returned from overseas, or you're a World War II veteran, it doesn't make any difference. And you walk into our veterans office, and unless it's an emergency, you're told, they hear your problem, they're very polite, they do an excellent job up there, don't get me wrong, but there's only so many hours in the day, and they assign that person an appointment. And till last month, I believe it was over 30 days, and it's slightly below 30 now. But we really need to keep an eye on that, and the board's pretty responsible up there.
Commissioner Wheelock?
Well, I guess a couple things about it. One, you know, we sit here and are appalled at a 30-day waiting list, but yet when our Veterans Office files in Washington, D.C., that waiting list is 13 to 15 months. You know, that's the part that's unacceptable as far as I'm concerned, or a big piece of that. You know, the thing that I see here, our veterans absolutely deserve the best care, best help that we can give them, and what we are offering is the professionalism of Grand Traverse County Veterans Office. And there is no question in our community, in our state, and in our, you know, most of the people that are involved anywhere, that we do a very top-notch professional job with handling veterans affairs in Grand Traverse County. And if we can offer that to the citizens in Benzie County, I'm more than happy to do that. You know, and I've always contended that those county lines, township lines are not concrete walls. There is no reason in the world that if we can provide a benefit to those people, we shouldn't be doing it if we have the ability to do that.
That was my point. I was trying to get somebody to say, we're doing really well.
Provided they stop at the toll booth on their way in, right?
We want to go back to Mr. Bender's report now.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention was that Rob Manigold, and this is a sleeper. Rob Manigold is a Peninsula Township Supervisor, noted that the agreements between the townships and the county to enforce their stormwater ordinances will be expiring on December 31st, and that he had asked whether the county was intending to renew those or not. I kind of indicated that the last time the board talked about that, they seemed disinclined to do that, but I told him that I would bring it up and see if we could get any more clarity, as they are expiring at the end of this month.
Commissioner Redmond?
Well, as I've been going to the townships that I represent, Acton, Whitewater, Union, and Fife Lake Township, in certain cases, this matter has been brought up. It was brought up at East Bay when I attended it, but I'm not the representative for East Bay yet. And this is a big learning curve that's coming to us, to the townships and to us pretty quick, and I didn't have the answer for it because I haven't been attending the Board of Public Works meetings and been going to the emergency management meetings instead. But and I'm going to need Bob's probably assistance on this momentarily, if he's able to come up, Mr. Chairman. But my understanding is that the townships basically have there's an ordinance in place. That ordinance is not expiring. What's expiring is this local agreement. That whether, you know, with the language that the prosecution office put together, in my memory serves me correctly, is that they put this language together and said, if you agree with this language, we will enforce the ordinance, and if you want to change the language, then you can enforce it locally with your council on a civil process. So, and again, Kevin can weigh in on this as well if it's necessary, but I guess my personal opinion is that if the ordinance, if it's worked well now, you know, through the process of the agreement, where we have this ordinance and the townships have agreed to the language for those ones that have, and the prosecutor's office is willing to enforce that on violations brought forward by the drain commissioner or whoever else, then why would we want to change that? That's the, and so, I would leave that up to, I would say we would agree to do that and continue to renew this agreement. That would be my personal opinion. And let the townships decide whether they want to enforce it locally or have the county enforce it. That would just be my opinion. Am I off or not, Bob?
No, that sounds accurate.
Okay.
Essentially, the reason that the townships adopted the ordinances is because back in 2006, the Attorney General held that the county is not allowed to have such an ordinance itself, and so the Drain Commissioner proposed having the townships adopt the ordinance because they can adopt ordinances to promote the general health, safety, and welfare of their citizens. And at that time, the county board agreed to be the enforcement agent through both the Drain Commissioner and our office if it goes to court.
Does that require that there's a unanimous, I mean, is it all of the townships have to participate, or is it just?
No, actually, Blair and
Blair Township never, Blair and Green Lake Township never have had that ordinance, and we get along fine. If you remember earlier in this year, we had some conversations with citizens, contractors, and the Drain Commissioner. And, for example, in Long Lake Township, we had a property owner that was harassed by the Drain Commissioner over a 13-year-old deal that he didn't even own the property then, but he was told he was responsible. And I am not in favor of the county affording the prosecution or the pursuing stormwater ordinance if the Drain Commissioner is in charge of that ordinance, the enforcement of it. Too many bad stories out there, and like I said, Green Lake and Blair have never been in that, and we've had no problems. In fact, at last night's Blair's meeting, they came up with see, if you don't adopt that stormwater ordinance, it falls back on the state statute. And that's been satisfactory in a lot of counties for a lot of years. And Blair and Green Lake both have used that without any problems, so.
Commissioner Henschel?
I kind of look at this like the assessing situation with East Bay. Not every township is getting assessing services from the county, so East Bay reimburses. So if the county is going to do something like this, and not all the townships are participating, and the city is or isn't participating, there should be a reimbursement to the county because the county dollars come from all the townships.
Now, I know Kevin McCully, our Drain Commissioner, is here and wants to weigh in on this, so if no one else has any particular comment right now, Kevin, you want to come give some comment?
Greetings to all of you. My name is Kevin McElliott, the County Drain Commissioner. I appreciate you allowing me this opportunity in public comment to just kind of paraphrase, as Mr. Administrator Benda has already started, what got us here and where we're going. Brief paraphrase. I've got a memo here that I'll give, but let me paraphrase it. As Benda had already mentioned, 5 years ago I initiated and resolved the mechanisms by which the locals who wanted a stormwater ordinance would have it administered and enforced at the county, and it got PR as a united front, as a team effort, and it worked very well, rather than all the townships being burdened by having to administer, enforce, and review it on their own. This Board of Commissioners has not advised me yet. They were in support of this. They have not advised me that uniform approach was no longer desirable. So I was advised by a few townships that and I reminded them in October that the intergovernmental agreements were due to expire. When I approached them, they said, okay, Kevin, we'll renew this, but we'd like you to change your ordinance. It's time for some updates. And 5 years ago, when I brought them the intergovernmental agreement, I said it had a 5-year time frame so that I could get before your board and determine what's working, what's not working, where do we go from there. I did also have an opportunity to speak separately with Prosecutor-elect Cooney and Administrator Benda about this to make sure I wasn't getting too far ahead of myself. Mostly they listened to where I was going, and they thought it was correct that if the townships wanted this, they should bring it to the board. That's why I've not approached the board yet, but unbeknownst to me, some communities are already voting on this. I was at Peninsula last night. I couldn't be in Whitewater at the same time. Whitewater did pass it. At any rate, I felt responsible because I engaged the local communities 5 years ago in this effort, and so I had to remind them about the intergovernmental agreement and whether or not they wanted to update to make any changes to the ordinance. It's yeoman's work, but I was willing to do it. Again, it's still early in the process. It's not been determined who would administer or enforce the ordinances yet. We're just trying to create a bridge with the intergovernmental agreements and perhaps change the ordinances if necessary. In my 8 years as Drain Commissioner, I have never asked the prosecutor for any enforcement action on any of these cases. There have been some violation notices, but there has not been any cost relative to enforcement that I've asked for. I think there was one case labeled the Canal Builder in Peninsula Township that the Watershed Center asked Bob to enforce, and that did go to court.
We've prosecuted under state law in several cases where the issue was brought to our attention and it turned out to be a state law violation, and that seemed the better way to go.
Quickly moving along, simply stated, regarding the intergovernmental agreements, I felt the do-nothing option was unacceptable. I got these folks involved. I had to remind them it was expiring. What do you want to do? And it was just unacceptable to do nothing, and now they are starting to make their decisions. Obviously, my personal passion here for this ordinance is what's driving my drive here. The alternatives would be that the Drain Commissioner has to make taxing drain districts to deal with uncontrolled stormwater runoff. I think this is the best bang for the buck that we had in the community, that was the lowest cost to developers and citizens proactively by having the ordinance. So without it, there could be uncontrolled stormwater runoff. I know Commissioner Fleece had mentioned in Blair they did not adopt it, but the engineers in Blair on commercial projects are voluntarily complying with it because they know that it's good policy to be a good neighbor relative to that way. I won't address the harassment allegation. As I said, it's my own personal passion for the land and water resources and the benefit of the ordinance. Final key points that came up last night, and perhaps Commissioner Gilman was there and may bring these up. The communities are confused. I think it's clear that they want the stormwater ordinance program rather than taxing drain districts. That's clear. That's what I'm hearing for the most part. This process has stopped these stormwater problems from happening for the last 20 years. We've had no new drain districts for the last 20 years as a result of the stormwater ordinance. I'm already qualified to administer and enforce the ordinance. I think there's some misinformation out there that I'm actually overqualified. In one community, I heard East Bay had adopted it, passed the motion to hire Wade Trim to now review these plans. And I'm actually overqualified, and now they've hired Wade Trim to review these plans. The developers, the citizens are going to pay more. That's East Bay's decision. I respect that. That's all I'm trying to do is make sure everyone is good to go ahead in the most effective manner for their citizens. The stormwater plan reviews will cost less to citizens if you don't have additional engineers and attorneys involved as we do now. Because of separating out soil erosion, as I mentioned, one township has already voted to have an engineer review the plans, increasing the cost. Moreover, depending on the completeness of the application, my turnaround on these projects now has been from 1 day to 1 week. And the cost, when it was with soil erosion, ranged from $113 to $275. Last night I was quite shocked to hear that Gordy Frazier proposed to Peninsula Township that it would take 2 weeks to do these reviews, and the cost would be from $400 to $800. For the last 6 months, I've been doing these reviews at no cost, and I'm prepared to promise to continue to do them for another year at no cost until we can get this all sorted out with the I'm looking for direction, consensus from this honorable board about how to proceed.
Last night, there was quite a bit of discussion about this. In fact, it went on quite a bit longer than maybe it needed to. But the $400 to $800, I mean, that's a little bit off, because he said that's for the bigger projects. It wasn't for a driveway up a hill or something necessarily. It would have been a major project to hit those numbers. One of my concerns, and this is one of the concerns that was expressed last night, was they asked if Mr. McEllier is qualified, and he is qualified to pursue this. But it follows the man. It doesn't follow the office, and there is a problem. So let's say something, God forbid, were to happen to our drain commissioner a half a year from now. Is this board ready to go back and make sure that we're back to square one, essentially? Who's going to be enforcing? It's not the office necessarily. It's the man who is qualified, and that presents a problem for us, because it is an elected position. We can nominate somebody to fulfill a term, but after that, it's an elected position. And you could have an 18-year-old just out of high school, a person actually become the drain commissioner if he so desires. So I would caution against placing it with the man, unless you're willing to go back later on and put a qualified engineer in the office once again at a greater cost. And I'm not willing to go there, at least not while I'm still here for the next 19 days. So
I had a couple of questions, Kevin.
Did
First
you
of all,
want me to-
I'm sorry, do you want to respond?
I thought there was a question there.
I'm sorry, go
Just
ahead.
briefly then, the ordinance was drafted by Bob Cooney, and a good safety net was built in there that at any time the township can pull back the administration and enforcement of those ordinances. So the man is not the sole person for administration and enforcement. It's the township's ordinance, and at any time, on any case, they can elect to pull it back. So whether it be a controversial case or otherwise. So that's option number one. Number two, as you mentioned about getting an engineer in the office, and that's when I heard what happened in East Bay, I think that just drives cost higher. That's my recommendation, to avoid that. You don't need it.
I just want to point out, I don't want to take too much credit for that ordinance, because it was really separated. We separated out the stormwater provisions of the old soil erosion and stormwater ordinance. And that ordinance was actually, it was Maureen Templeton, our former drain commissioner, who was working with an engineering firm and some attorneys downstate to come up with that whole ordinance. And so we really just removed the stormwater provisions in that ordinance. And I was happy to hear some suggestion that if you were to continue with the stormwater ordinance, that you should go back and look at it 5 or 6 years later. And because I do think there have been some ambiguities and some concerns about the way it's been enforced, because I think the language of the ordinance could be improved. And I feel the same way about the soil erosion ordinance, and I've suggested that to the administrator, that I think that needs another look at. But
Mr. Cooney, if I could ask a question.
Yeah.
Does these agreements, the stormwater ordinances that are expiring at the end of this year, are they radically different from state law in terms of how they regulate stormwater?
Well, I guess I disagree with the statement that there's a state law that replaces the stormwater ordinance. There's a state law that covers soil erosion and sedimentation control.
But not
a state law that covers stormwater. But what I would say is that a lot of townships have zoning ordinances that do some of the same things, but probably not all of the same things as a stormwater ordinance.
Okay.
And would you agree then there's also liability? I mean, sans an ordinance, if somebody destroys something there is a liability for it.
Well, I think if we take on the responsibility of coming up with a plan that had, I don't know, ended up causing a flood instead of preventing it, I suppose, just like our building department was drug into a lawsuit over the marina incident, we've been dismissed from that,
Right.
obviously, but, I suppose there's an argument to be made that the government entity could be liable in some way.
And then Kevin, I had a question for you. Have many of the townships renewed their ordinances, this year?
Let's be clear, the two issues on the floor are the intergovernmental agreement and the ordinances. Now, the ordinances have no deadline, and as I mentioned...
That's true, okay. So the intergovernmental agreements then?
Correct. That 5-year expires this December 26th. Chairman Wheelock at that time signed him on that date. That's when the clock started ticking. And as I mentioned, a 5-year date was built in, and that had a purpose to see what's working, what's not. But just coincidentally, and to confuse the situation, a couple of townships pressured me to change the ordinance. They want low-impact development techniques involved. Garfield Township really pressed, and I pressed me to get that draft out to them by Thanksgiving. And so it seemed fair to offer it to others. Long Lake Township had also been expressing that things have changed, it's time to update the ordinance. And I agree, this is that type of ordinance. It's not like other ordinances, it should be periodic.
But it is their ordinance, so basically they were just asking for your assistance in redrafting it?
As the technical expert in aware of water resources, that's correct, yes.
Okay, so have new ordinances been drafted, have new ordinances been adopted then by some of these townships?
No, just drafted as requested.
Okay. And have any of the intergovernmental agreements been, re-signed?
I heard last night in Whitewater Township, it did. In Peninsula Township last night, they tabled the issue because they wanted direction from this board. And then I saw in East Bay Township the night before last, they decided to hire Wade Trim to review. Interesting point, they passed a motion that Wade Trim will review the soil erosion and the stormwater, which is not allowable. Bob will concur.
Well,
the soil erosion portion cannot be done by Wade Trim.
I heard a similar sentiment expressed by Garfield Township.
2 points, if I could, Mr. Chairman. First is that, I guess it's my understanding, with talking with Whitewater Township last night, that they agreed with, I think, what is your recommendation at this point in time, is that you're asking the local units of government to extend the interlocal agreement, whatever agreement it is, for enforcement of the ordinance for like 90 days to give time to further evaluate the ordinance and to give all these new elected boards that have come on that don't have the history and the knowledge some education as to why we've set it up this way and to make a determination if they want to go in a different direction. So that's my understanding of what you're trying to accomplish. So if I could, from you and Mr. Cooney, what would be your recommendation at this point for this board to do?
Let me just speak non-legally first. You're absolutely right. Thanks for bringing up that point. Rather than force everyone to consider the revisions on this ordinance right away, we need a bridge. And so this intergovernmental agreement, while it has a 5-year time frame on it, it also has item number 6 is a termination clause that says any of the parties can opt out with a advance notice. I think it says 90 days in there, anytime they change. So that's a 90-day bridge just to consider what they want to do with the ordinance. That was the non-legal. Continuing in technical, your question was, what do we want you to do? I'm already offering to administer it free of charge right now until we can sort all this out. The administration, so it appears it's an enforcement issue. And the local communities are looking for direction from the board. Are you willing to support the enforcement? But yet I've told the communities we've not had to spend any money yet on enforcement. But I have no control over that, so I'll have to let Bob take it from there. It's an enforcement issue.
Bob, if I can get your recommendation on this?
I think the concern that was expressed by some commissioners when this came up was, why is the county paying to enforce a township ordinance? And I think that's a valid point. and it should be considered. What I can tell you is that, as far as I'm concerned, as the prosecuting attorney and as the office that would be enforcing this in court, I would leave it up to the board whether you think it's important enough, or, if you think it's important, we'll handle it, because like Kevin says, typically we can find, it's not a huge amount of investment of time for our office. So, I don't think that's a factor for our office, but if the board doesn't want our office involved in this, or they don't want to pay Kevin or some other office to enforce this, then, that's a valid consideration. We do have, I can think of at least 2 other township ordinances, junk and noise, that the county does enforce. And I could give you valid reasons why I think it's important to enforce the noise ordinance as a county and not just among individual townships. I think the junk ordinance is maybe, that's a little bit more debatable. But just to point out, we do have 2 county ordinances, or township ordinances throughout the county that the county does enforce through its sheriff's office and our office.
Well, my perception is the townships are looking for some direction from the Board of Commissioners whether we want to continue this arrangement. That, if everyone agrees with the language of the ordinance, or if we want to change it and then later agree with it at a later time, that we would be willing to enforce it if they agree to all the same languages. The issue was, I believe back then, was here's the ordinance we've drafted. If you agree with it, we will enforce it. If you disagree with it, you can do something different. So could you help me, for example, if I'm in favor of continuing the process that we have right now and giving you time to evaluate the ordinance with the townships for any changes or whatever, could you give me the framework of the motion that would be necessary for this to occur? Is that you would make a motion to move forward with the continued enforcement by Grand Traverse County and to provide time for you to evaluate the ordinance with our civil counsel and bring back any changes if necessary.
Could I raise one more point?
Yes.
I guess, I think rather than the drain commissioner and I sitting down, to me, what's important is that this commission is involved in determining whether they think it's important to enforce stormwater, whether that is a valid function of the county or not. I think it's an issue that should be studied. And in conjunction with, is this ordinance accomplishing what the county would like to see happen as far as stormwater goes?
Bob, should we agree to extend it for 90 days to allow that time to occur, that function to occur? Because it's going to cancel out here fairly soon, so they need some indication. Should we just say that we're willing to extend this for a period of time and then based on further evaluation?
I guess I don't want to make that recommendation. I would be neutral on that.
All right, okay.
I'm just saying that
somebody else can try to get a shot to it.
Yeah.
All right.
Commissioner Fleece next, then Lempool, then Henschel.
The sheriff's department contracts with the townships for police officers. If you don't pay, you don't get one. That's a pretty fair system, in my opinion. In this particular deal, if the township adopts the interlocal agreement, the county agrees to foot the bill. There hasn't been, according to Mr. Cooney, any funds expended, but it only takes 1 or 2. Or say you get an aggressive developer in Garfield Township, can run up some pretty big bills. The third thing that concerns me, well, that's the cost liability of it. The third thing that concerns me as a township resident of Blair and a trustee-elect, why wouldn't Blair Township and Green Lake Township be reimbursed for the cost that it costs the county yearly to do that? because we're paying taxes and we're getting nothing in return. And we choose not to participate for a lot of little reasons, like the Drain Commissioner stated earlier. Fee runs from $113 to $275, which we had last summer. And the trouble I had then, and I still don't have an answer today, is why would he charge a homeowner $113 for a permit? And the homeowner really doesn't probably know what he's doing, so consequently that office has to assist them run out. Where you have a contractor building, and this was the exact question.
Yeah, I remember that.
Building the spec house, which is purely a residential home to be sold to a one-family or two-family unit. Why would he charge them $275 when, once they pull the permit, they know exactly what's expected of them, they know the ordinance, they know the state law? And we never did get an answer out of the Drain Commissioner on that, and we still haven't. So it's the unfairness and unevenness of the permit fees is one reason Blair didn't adopt it, and I was on Blair's board when we made that decision back in 2006. But I think the county board, sitting here the last 6 years as county commissioner, I would be concerned why we weren't treating all townships equally. Because we do when it comes to police officers. If you want a community police officer, you pay. In fact, I sat down in a meeting the other night at the village of Kingsley, and they were discussing perhaps union of village, Paradise Township, and Fife Lake has one. In fact, there was a Fife Lake representative there that spoke what an excellent job the Sheriff's Department does in that area of the county, which is really South County. Mr. Inman, would that be correct?
Yes.
Just checking to see if you knew where Fife Lake was.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, the moral to the story is Fife Lake is paying,
And it's done.
the MDOPers and the crooks are carrying Kingsley away presently. So the council and the Township Board in Paradise, I'm sure, are going to contract with the Sheriff's Department to put an officer down there because they've had an officer serve before and they didn't have those problems. So I'm not in favor of the county enforcing this unless the township wants to reimburse the county, or they want, that are accepting this from the prosecutor's office, and the Drain Commissioner, or they reimburse the townships that don't participate. Either way.
Yeah, I guess my question is what happens if we do nothing? Does it throw everything in limbo? Does it mean the developers don't have any place to go for enforcement? They can just do anything they want to, or they just follow state law?
Well, that's the thing. Most counties do not have this type of an ordinance. I should say most townships in other counties, as far as I know, don't have these types of ordinances. They're fairly, it's unique. I know of a couple other counties that have something similar, but and so, like I said before, I think typically zoning and just the fact that you might get sued if you flood your neighbor's property is typically what people look to, and as far as enforcement. You know, but there are arguments, and this is why I think some study needs to be done, because I know that in talking to our former Drain Commissioner, Maureen Templeton, you know, she echoed what Kevin said about she believes that we've prevented having to build county drains as a result of this stormwater ordinance. And, you know, I don't know. I'm not a I'm not an environmental engineer. I don't know enough about that myself, but I think you could probably bring together enough people to figure that out. So.
Well, I was talking about the interlocal agreement. If we decide not to do anything with it tonight, and it expires, what happens?
Good point, and I think Commissioner Goodman will concur that he heard council address this last night in Peninsula Township. The interlocal agreement was drafted by Attorney Jim Young, and it was just an additional safety net, and And Bob Cooney agreed, it does no harm, let's do it. Anyhow, long story short, if you let it expire, it's not the end of the world. The ordinance doesn't have an expiration date. I'm willing, as I said, to do these. I've been doing these reviews free of charge the last 6 months. I will continue to do them, and just because there isn't an interlocal governmental agreement doesn't prevent me from doing those reviews. That's a good point I wanted to address. There were some, I forgot the other questions that were floating around.
Well, I'm just thinking that what we ought to do is give this to Dave and say, Dave, you figure out what's best for the commissioners and come back with a recommendation to us. He probably would be able to understand that more than what we are able to, and then come back and make that recommendation.
But, I believe I heard Mr. Cooney say that he thought that perhaps a subcommittee or a committee of the whole, with him in attendance and perhaps the drain commissioner, ought to discuss this matter.
Well, I think the townships need to be brought into this thing, and we have a townships association, and we sure shouldn't be doing any of these kind of decisions without their input into this.
I know, but if we're paying the bill, Herb.
I understand.
If we're paying the bill, that's our decision.
But that's why I'm saying, I think we should give Dave the authority to look into this and then come back and make recommendations to us. And I'll make that a motion.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second just for the cause of discussion.
Okay, but before you discuss, I have people ahead of you, I'm sorry. Commissioner Henschel, you've been waiting a while.
I was just wondering, is there anything that prevents you from contracting individually outside of the county with the townships that want enforcement? You could, on a personal level, provide that enforcement without the county being involved. Then we don't have to worry about reimbursement to the county for expenses, because it's really, my big beef with the whole thing is it's not fair to townships that are not using this service for us to provide it to some and not to others. It's everybody's dollars to provide services to the county. So have you considered, being that contractor that enforces for them on a personal level?
Great question. I was reminded of that recently when Director of Human Resources, Jen Seaman, you passed the motion, no, we do not want you to find a light and power director, but if you want to do that on your own, you have our blessing. So I thought, okay, then it must be legal, but I would defer to legal counsel on the mechanisms on that.
Bob, could you speak to that?
I don't see why he couldn't do that.
Yeah, I'm sure. He's an elected official.
I was going to say, I don't think it takes an action of this board, does it?
No.
Oh, certainly.
Commissioner Wheelock.
Well, I guess my point would be, these are township ordinances, and we've heard from a number of the townships that they would like to relook at their ordinances. My suggestion would be, and if this motion that's on the floor fails, I'm going to make a motion that we allow the intergovernmental agreement to expire. The township ordinance doesn't expire. The stormwater ordinance that we're all accustomed to still remains in effect in all of the participating townships that currently have it in place. And then allow the townships the opportunity to evaluate their stormwater ordinance, see if they want to change it, whether they want to have it, and then they can either contract with their zoning administrator to enforce it. The zoning administrator typically is the chief policing enforcement officer in their township of their township ordinances. The township supervisor would be the other one that would have the ability statutorily. So if those people choose not to enforce their own ordinance, they wish to contract with someone, we may hear back from them whether they want to contract with the county. We have the construction code office that's enforcing the soil erosion ordinance. Maybe the construction code office is going to enforce the stormwater. But this is a township ordinance. This should go back to the townships, allow the townships to decide how they want their ordinance to look at, and then they should be able to decide whether it's something they want to enforce within their own organization, whether they want to contract with someone, and who they would like to contract with, and then that discussion. But I certainly don't believe that's a discussion that we should be having on their behalf.
Mr. Inman.
I sort of like that recommendation, Sonny, and...
Well, I'd have done it 10 minutes ago if we could have got to that point on the
yeah,
discussion.
and, but this, But the discussion, I think, is necessary, but if this motion fails, would you recommend that we, if it does pass, that we just immediately send out a letter to all the townships, just giving them the feedback on your motion, and just ratify it as a full board, because it is expiring, and it does give them a little more time to know what to do?
What are you asking for?
I'm just asking that, if this motion fails, if you put your motion on the floor, can we just ratify it as a board and send communication out to all the townships?
That's fine. We just notify them that we are going to allow the intergovernmental agreement to expire. But we recognize that the township's stormwater ordinances remain in effect in Grand Traverse County.
And to, like you said, ask them to evaluate their ordinance and
That's their decision, not mine.
All right.
Any support on this motion?
Yeah, there was a support.
Yeah, there was support. Can you read the motion, please?
Well, the motion was to give it to
The
Dave.
current motion right now is to direct Dave Benda to investigate the interlocal agreement and present his recommendations to the board.
And it was seconded by Mr. Edmund.
I just want to say that I think the people in our community want to see clean water and make sure that there isn't any problems. So how we go about doing it, I think, is going to be the challenge. And that's, and I felt that, that Dave would be working with the townships to be able to figure out what's best. And so it's not the fact that I don't want him working with the townships. I think that's his, we're giving him, hey, go ahead, work with the townships, figure out what's going on, rather than trying to have 13 different meetings going on between now and in the next 9 months, or 6 months, or 3 months, whenever we do it. He takes the lead, brings the people together to figure out what's best for the townships and for the county.
This is a township ordinance. This is not the county's responsibility.
But we have the interlocal agreement. That's our concern.
Are we ready to vote when we dispose of this? Okay.
And that's for roll call.
Everybody understand the motion? And roll call, please.
Commissioner Thomas?
No.
Please?
No.
Wheelock?
No.
Gilman?
No.
Inman?
No.
Henschel?
No.
Lemkool?
Yes.
Chairman Richardson?
No. Okay, motion fails.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to allow the intergovernmental agreement between Grand Traverse County and the townships to expire, and advise the townships that we do recognize that their stormwater ordinances are still in effect, but at this time, Grand Traverse County is not prepared to enforce them.
I'll support that.
And support by Felice. Well, see, now you just threw another wrench into the works.
If the thing about it is that we don't have anybody in place. They have, we make available, the townships have the ability to contract with someone to enforce it, or if they wish to do it themselves. We are not
But
going
there's
to
two
mandate
things.
for
I mean, Mr. Cooney has already stated several times that a whole range of township ordinances that are enforced by, the sheriff's office and the prosecuting attorney. Now, whether there's another level of service here involving the drain commissioner, then maybe that's a separate question.
Well, then I'll just make the motion read that we will allow the intergovernmental agreement to expire and recognize to the townships that their stormwater ordinance is still in effect.
Okay.
Would Felice like to amend that as well, his second?
Second, you want to second? You okay with that? And then it's your thought that then the townships will
The
let us know
townships
if
will
we want to-
evaluate their
they want the
ordinance, and
county
they'll
to be
let us
more
know if they
involved in
want
that.
us to do anything with it.
Okay, everybody understand the motion?
Yep.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Cleese?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Gilman?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Lemkool?
No.
Thomas?
Yes.
Chairman Richardson?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Motion carries. Okay.
You could prepare that letter. Sure. I'll sign it.
I appreciate your time. Have the greatest
Someone else
day.
will sign it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Or you could just sign it. The board did this.
Yep.
They've done it.
Okay.
Is there any more on the administrator's report?
I just wanted to point out that Senate Bill 1020 is moving fairly quickly now, and it's look like it might become law soon. So it's in a committee. We've notified that committee that our board has been unanimously in support of this bill, so we're hoping that it moves along quickly.
Okay. Okay, that brings us to,
We're still on the, we have a couple of,
I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem.
Go ahead.
David, can I back up just a minute? I see the note about the replacement water heater for the Hall of Justice. That building's 5 years old. I don't understand why we should be replacing a water heater. And I'm sorry, I meant to ask Danny when he was here, and he got out of here.
Well, I can find out that,
You know, I
answer
just,
that. I didn't know it was only 5 years old.
well, yeah, the Hall of Justice was dedicated in 2007 or 2008,
And
so,
completely renovated, so.
you know.
Yeah, did they replace that heater?
I would assume they did.
Oh, I have to believe it. It was a complete gutted remodel.
Yeah, you can look into it, I guess.
I just couldn't imagine that a water heater would have to be replaced in that building
Right.
5 years after it was built.
Yeah, I mean, it was a new building, a new use.
Basically.
Totally remodel, yeah.
I'd like to back up to the, you mentioned the Joint Parks and Recreation Authority, a couple parts on that. There's two parts. The first, I'm going to hit, which was the second part, which the city manager inquired about the possibility of county involvement in Hickory Hills. Please don't. That is their albatross. Let them keep it.
Thank you.
As far as the Parks and Recreation Authority, you have control over the Parks Department ultimately now. An authority would be a bad and unresponsive move, especially when you have people, whether they're there now or later. It's a perfect opportunity for empire building, not a good plan to have an authority in this county, particularly when in fact there are parks that are being run locally, for example, Civic Center South. We do provide help with them, but they've done a wonderful job, and we're getting a lot more bang for the buck by allowing them to do it there, and they have more pride of ownership there as well. It's a big deal. Other than that, I don't have anything else on that report. Thanks.
And that's all I have on that.
Okay, we're done with the administrator's report then, unfinished business. First is the reorganization plan for the Tattle Board of Trustees.
Can I address that briefly?
The Traverse Area District Library Board of Trustees, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to report back to the board that the ad hoc committee that you selected, Larry Fleece, myself, Jason Gilman, met with the mayor several times, and at several meetings we had board members from the various libraries, and there was a consensus among all of us to bring this recommendation to you, and Bob Cooney was available to be at the meeting, and he assisted us with the write-up that you see in the packet. So I thank Bob and the members of the committee that basically the city, Mike Estes has represented to us that he would go in and recommend to the city that they bring their membership from 3 to 2 and ours from 4 to 5, keep the membership at 7, that we would try to geographically and seek recommendations from the member libraries from their geographical areas when we make appointments, and there's a step change. And since Commissioner Gilman has already been given a term, that it was recommended that we maintain his term when he goes off the board. And part of the recommendation is that we would not have a county commissioner representative, and then we would just allow Commissioner Gilman to continue with that term, and that was unanimously recommended. And so I would personally like to thank Commissioner Fleece for really starting the ball rolling with this thing, and it was his opinion and his suggestion that we set up this ad hoc committee, meet with the mayor, meet with the members of the various library boards, and come up with a workable plan. Since the 80s, there's been really a dynamics of the changing of the population in Grand Traverse County and the building of new libraries, and that this was really a great compromise in terms of allowing those member libraries and/or their representatives to have a greater voice on that board, and the resolution of Commissioner Gilman to stay on the commission was highly recommended. on the Library District Board, and we would relieve that responsibility, not as a county commissioner. That would be a public appointment. And since he's already received a term on behalf of the Board of Commissioners, that we would allow him to continue to serve through that term. So, Commissioner Fleece, do you have anything? Because you were really the person that we have to thank to get this ball rolling, and it was your passion and your feeling that, you know, getting us together and trying to put this agreement together really is a compliment to you, because it really turned out, I think, as a good resolution.
Well, I truly believe that it's an excellent agreement. Mayor Estes obviously had a vested interest in this, and he was very cooperative. And we're not removing anybody from city side or county side. It's going to be done by attrition as the appointments expire. So on 12/31 of 13, when the last two expire, the county's going to appoint, or the city's going to, instead of appointing two, they're going to appoint one. And that will give the city 2 appointees henceforth and us 5, which I think is really commendable. It's the way it should be. And then doing it by district, trying to align it with the commissioners' districts, I think is excellent. And I think it's better for the community as a whole.
So we have before us a memorandum of understanding, and I asked Bob to put together exactly kind of the step-by-step action that you see on page 43, how things would occur. We would start with an agreement with this memorandum of understanding, and then we would pass that, and then the city would take it up, and if they pass it, then we would prepare a joint agreement, and then the board would have a guideline in terms of how we move forward with appointments. Bob Coody, do you have anything else to add while we're on this matter?
Could I just make a point of clarification, though?
Yes.
There are 2 errors on page 43.
Okay.
One is that excuse me, not page 43, 44. Bob Thompson's, it expires 12/31 of 13, as well as Greg Light.
Oh, okay, 12.
And if the
okay,
the city's term would be extended until that would be the county would pick it up at the beginning of the year to keep it consistent with the county scheduling.
Okay,
was what we
agreed on.
We'd agreed on, yeah.
Okay, Bob?
That is correct. In fact, Meta Lansdale had emailed me the other day and asked about the terms for Thompson and Lloyd,
Yeah.
and it is, they do expire 12/31/13.
Okay. So those would be the only changes?
Yes, and I'd also like to point out that I believe that this board does not have the ability to remove Commissioner Gilman. I believe that because his appointment is per state statute, that it doesn't run with him being a county commissioner, that when you appoint a person to that position, they hold that position till the end of their term. So that's actually my opinion about
And that is
Commissioner
specific
Gilman.
only to that statute?
And the city is okay with that because Commissioner Gilman will cease to be a county commissioner as of the first of the year, and that was one of the things that they were looking for, is they wanted the county board to be removed from the TAL board.
Yeah, and just a footnote, if I may, I've asked Bob to work with our administrative staff that when, there are 2 things occur. When the chairman recommends appointments annually to the Board of Commissioners and gets ratification, then Chris establishes a term, because it's required that we have terms. And as commissioners decide to switch assignments, then the new commissioner, the other commissioner would take on the remaining term of that appointment, or if he or she leaves the board, then it's been our practice that the person leaves, doesn't fill the county, because he's left, he or she has left, they're no longer a county commissioner, so that seat is vacant. Then another commissioner is appointed by the chairman and then ratified by the board, and then fills the remaining term. So what I've asked Bob to do is to in the cases when, unless it violates state law, which I think this is probably the only one, I think, is that in the resolution, when we appoint, that there's an understanding if the commissioner leaves, this is the county commissioner position, if that is the pleasure of the board, that when that commissioner leaves, then they no longer serve the remaining term of that appointment. So we're looking into that at that point. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
We did conclude that there aren't any current county commissioners that are in that situation where they will be at the end of their commission term, and it causes any problem with any of the boards that they sit on.
Okay, all right.
Committees,
Most commissioner
authorities.
appointments are to coincide with their commission seat.
Correct.
Except the library one.
Except for the
Except the library one.
As
has-
it turns out.
Has some statutory issue apparently.
So,
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the memorandum of understanding as outlined.
with the amendment on the term changes, okay.
The correction on the term.
Yeah, correction.
The correction.
On page 44.
Motion
Page
by
44.
Wheelock, supported-
Well, but those truly aren't part of the memo of
No, they are.
understanding.
No,
They-
that's- Yeah.
supported by-
Yeah, that's just a cover memo.
All right, that's just a timeline.
So we're approving the memorandum of understanding.
Right, any further discussion on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to authorize the board chairman to sign this so as that it can be completed rather than waiting for the end of the month.
So you want to ratify it as a full
Let's
board?
ratify it now.
Support.
Okay, I have a motion for immediate ratification. Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any motion carries.
Because I don't know if Linda's
My-
going to be
my-
here.
by the way,
to
my
sign off on it.
understanding is the
Maybe we'll wait
city-
till the 30th of the month.
The city's going to take up the memorandum of understanding this coming Monday night.
Oh, that's right. Good point. Good, right.
At one point, I was told they weren't even going to look at it through January, but they are going to deal with it on the
Well,
7th.
because the county clerk that's identified and everything else isn't going to be here come the end of the month. So
That's a good point.
we just do it now, we're done with it.
Yep.
I would like to thank the board for the vote and the confidence on that, and it's a wise decision. And if it seems like we tried to hurry it up before the end of the year, we did, because some of us aren't going to be around.
Right.
And the same, Mayor Estes thought that, well, perhaps a year would be all right, and I said, well, Mayor Estes, you might not be here in a year, so, but he was really sincere, very helpful, and hopefully the city commission goes along with it, and I think it benefits every citizen in Grand Traverse County. Thank you.
It makes sense.
Okay, that brings us to committee appointments.
Harmony.
I'm just going to read, this is an ad hoc of Commissioners Inman, Wheelock, Gilman, and me, Commissioner Richardson, and we made, if I can just read these following recommendations and then take a motion, I would like them read publicly. For the Concealed Weapon Licensing Board, reappoint David Beganowski to a 4-year term. To the Board of Public Works, appoint Haider Kazim for a 3-year term. For the Planning Commission, appoint Sarah Capriva and Jeff Cockfield for 3-year terms. For the Economic Development Corporation, appoint Pete Strom and Gerald Sheffalo for 6-year terms. And to the Veterans Administrative Board, reappoint Jacob Rossi for a 4-year term. And these
Motion
will
to
all
approve.
take effect January 1st.
Support.
I have a motion by Wheelock and support by Lemkool. Any discussion on these? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Then this is, I believe, informational only, but it's the response from Parks and Rec regarding fencing at the Civic Center. Basically, they say they're going to strive to erect natural fences, and if they need any money, they're going to come ask us for it, so.
Okay.
Rob, does this help you?
That'll be down the road.
It's going to look good.
Okay, is
just
there any other
comment that-
unfinished business? That brings us to new business. Commissioner Fleich, you had some suggestions on the county administrator contract?
Yes, I would like to reevaluate his contract. When we were interviewing the prospective administrators. We ended up settling on Mr. Benda, and Jen Seaman, our HR director, a very capable individual, made to this board a recommendation, and we, the commission, I don't remember if it was unanimous or not, probably wasn't, but we chose not to follow every item. And at the time, and I was one of the big proponents of not following that. So after watching Mr. Benda in action for the past 6 months, after rereading Jen Seaman's original proposal, there was 2 areas, and Commissioner Inman may want to correct me if I miss anything, but the first one was salary. Myself and a couple other commissioners thought that Dave ought to be started at $100,000, which was below level 1. In fact, it was $10,000 below level 1. And finally, the board agreed on level 1, so we started Dave at 110. Then, as far as severance, when Dennis left here, he had a 6-month severance package.
Oh, I had a 1 year.
Or no, that was changed, I think.
Yeah, we changed it previously.
Originally, he had a contract at 1, I think it got back down to 6
Cut it back to
months.
6 months?
Yeah, I think he backed down on the 6 months.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, Jen Seaman's suggestion was to this board that Mr. Benda ought to get a 6-month severance package. So, like I stated earlier, sometimes you have to eat crow, and you have to admit, well, maybe you were wrong. And I've never been too big of a person to do that. And I certainly missed the guess on Mr. Benda, and I would hope this board has probably had some of the similar observations that I've had. In fact, on the desk tonight, we have an evaluation by 7 out of the 9 commissioners, and I would agree with them, 100%. I didn't fill out one, and one other commissioner didn't, but let me tell you, everything that I've just stated pretty much was agreed on by the commissioners that did fill it out. And I would like to make a motion that we follow Jen Seaman's original recommendation, that we put Mr. Benda up to a level 3, and that we give him a 6-month severance package instead of the one he presently has.
Could you rephrase your motion just to accept the original recommendation from Jen Seaman, and then council can prepare the changes on the contract? That'd be just easier to do.
Yep. Okay. I would make a motion that we accept the original county administrator contract recommendation of May 8th, 2012, authored by Jen Seaman, and that we instruct civil counsel to prepare the necessary changes in the contract to coincide with that.
And have the chairman authorized to sign it.
And the chairman's authorized to sign it.
Okay, I will second that motion.
And what would the effective date be?
That was my
Effective date would be the date we would approve it. We can ratify it now, or you can wait to the board meeting.
Or you just want to say
I would think
January 1st?
Just make it January.
January
January 1st.
January 1's fine.
If Mr. Benda is agreeable with that, I would say January 1st.
Right.
Saves a lot of hassle.
Yeah, we would sign it at the board meeting, but it would be effective January 1.
And Dave, being I'm leaving, I think Gilman said in 19 days. I would hope, sincerely, that you continue the excellent job you've done. The new ideas, and let me tell you something else about Benda. Found out, kind of in a roundabout way at a funeral, that his first cousin is married to my first cousin. So that kind of makes us united by family.
Is that a conflict? Is that a conflict?
That's why I'm leaving. He said I had to leave. But anyway, Dave has done an excellent job, and I'm going to give you one little example. Animal control issue. and there's a lot of other players involved here, but he's the man that I asked as a commissioner, our administrator. I said, I want you to look into this. I explained why, and let me tell you, it was wham, bam, and it was a done deal. We've had several meetings. I'm going to leave this board with a good taste in my mouth, and you know, them dogs and horses still don't have a cell phone to call, but I'm going to feel much more relaxed knowing that we've made some excellent changes, and I'm sure Mr. Benda will keep an eye on that. And that's the type of response we need.
I would just like to tell the board that Commissioner Fleece, on his own accord, got with me and made the suggestion that he had very strong feelings that that we should readdress County Administrator Benda's contract, and that that we both agreed that the board at that time had some unknowns about Mr. Benda. He was coming in, and about his style and his ability to communicate and his ability to work among the commissioners and the staff. His expertise and his experience, I don't think was a question, because obviously he has spent his whole career in county government in Clinton, Ingham, and Midland County. And as I indicated previously, I felt he was the most experienced, one of the most experienced county administrators in the state of Michigan. And the board structured the contract really because of some unknowns at that point in time in terms of, you know, our acceptance of him as our county administrator. So, you know, the time has, you know, I think he's had a great 6 months here. We did an evaluation. Everything came out really exceptionally well. In fact, it came out, for most of us, it was, you know, these grades that Dave got were higher than the ones that Dennis Aloya had received during his tenure here at Grand Traverse County for 10 years. But I believe that Jen Seaman did the appropriate recommendation at the time for someone, because as you remember or recall, the Board of Commissioners directed Jen Seaman, the Human Resource Director, to go back and negotiate a contract she felt would accommodate Dave and our Board of Commissioners based on his level of experience and what he would bring to the county based on our population level and our peer counties. And she did the analysis and came back and made that recommendation. That particular package was less than what Dave was making at Midland County. In fact, his replacement, who was the finance director, has a better enhanced contract than Dave, that we would be, if this passes, than what we've proposed. But I have all the confidence that Dave wants to continue his employment with Grand Traverse County based on my conversations with him, and that this original recommendation would be more consistent with someone with his experience, and I think we've had some time to interact with him, and hopefully any concerns that we have had at the beginning, not knowing Dave, have gone by the wayside, and that I'm hopeful that the board will approve the original recommendations made by Jen to be fair to Dave. And personally, I don't want to have Dave leave the county, or to have other counties or search firms try to contact him to see if he has interest in higher paying positions in the state or elsewhere. I'd like to have Dave committed to Grand Traverse County for the remaining tenure of his career, and this original recommendation, I believe, would do that. So I strongly support the commission to move forward and pass this, and then have it approved at the board meeting on the 26th, and then I'll sign it, and it'll be effective the 1st of January as the motion is on the floor.
Commissioner Miller.
As somebody who opposed the starting salary to begin with, I think I was happy where we wound up with the 110. I am going to oppose this. Not at all based on any lack of performance that Dave Benda has, okay? In fact, you could actually read into some of this, and you can tell who's writing some of the, yeah, that's right, exactly. The appropriate wardrobe at times is just absolutely wonderful. The jumping 2 steps, one of the reasons we wanted to keep the cost down was to keep the cost down. It's a drop in the bucket in terms of the overall budget, but an automatic comparison of other counties, of other institutions, there is no automatic comparison. This is Grand Traverse County. It's one of the most beautiful places on this planet. And yes, in fact, the headlines used to read half the pay is the view of the bay and the surroundings, the people, the temperate climate. In reality, we have no natural disasters. Who wouldn't want to live here? But I think a step increase, yeah, I could see that. But we have yet to go through a complete year's worth of budget drafted by our administrator. I think it'd be appropriate to consider that. We, of course, approve the budget, so it's as incumbent upon us that the budget is in an appropriate way. But jumping with the full, I can't go there, and I want to make it very clear that I have nothing but the utmost admiration, and it's not going to hurt my feelings if this passes, but I just want you to know this has absolutely no bearing on how I feel that you've done your job.
Commissioner, please, and then Henschel.
I have just 2 sentences. Number 1, the motion is that we follow the May 8th recommendation of our Human Resources Director, who does an excellent job, in my opinion. And the second sentence is like I admitted, I'm big enough to eat some crow, but I think I just heard a commissioner that wasn't. So maybe he'll rethink before he votes.
Commissioner Henschel.
We have a rating scale, on a scale of 1 to 5, that rates our administrator based on experience and basically ability to perform the work. We went with a level 1 because at the time he's a new hire, and we didn't know him. We didn't know his ability. We knew he had experience, but we didn't know how well he'd perform. He's demonstrated that on a scale of 1 to 5, he's at least a 3. I would argue even a 4, and with experience in a couple of years, he'll easily be a 5 in my opinion. But to me, this is really about recognizing that experience, that ability. I mean, if you want to change the pay scale, fine, that's a different discussion. But, Dave is easily a level 3. He has the staff. I haven't met any staff that don't like working with him. A lot of them absolutely adore him. The community likes working with him. I haven't met anybody that's had a problem working with Dave. It's just, he's a top-notch administrator, and I'm going to support this. The only reason I wouldn't is maybe it should be a 4 instead of a 3.
Well, I have a very clear memory from that meeting. And I was responsible for part of the, chipping and chipping, because I thought the vacation was a little generous, and I was happy to see it pushed down. But I also remember toward the end of the meeting as we kept chopping and chopping. And remember, this is a contract that was negotiated between Jen Seaman and David Benda. It isn't like, she was dropping a virginal thing on him. I mean, he was part and parcel of, agreeing to the terms. At one point, I think I said, do we want to hire this guy or not? Because the way we're going, there's no guarantee he'll even, accept the job once he sees the term. So in my mind, we've gotten a bargain for 6 months, and now hopefully we're making right what we should have made right 6 months, or actually 7 months ago when we, extended the offer. Any further comments? Okay. Roll call vote, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any public comment by anyone in the audience? Wishes to comment on this? Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Wheelock?
Yes.
Gilman?
I'm hopeful.
Slap him 5.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Gilman.
Inman,
Yes.
Henschel,
Yes.
Lemkool,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yep.
Please,
Yes.
Chairman Richardson.
Yes, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Board rules? Something we need to take action on?
Could we ask Bob to, let me make a remark on that if I could?
Yeah.
That in my discussions with a number of issues with Civil Council, I, on behalf of Commissioner Lemkool, who asked me to look into a question for council, and I did follow up with Commissioner Lemkool's suggestion is to visit with Bob Cooney and ask him if the county commission is moving from 9 to 7, is there any changes that we should make in our board rules to be prepared for our organizational meeting on January 2nd? Or is there any other things that would stick out based on just a quick evaluation that should be maybe amended or changed, or any kind of language things that, would flow smoother or whatever? So Bob, I want to thank you for taking your time to evaluate the county board's rules, and Bob does have several suggestions to change for the board rules, and if I could, Mr. Chairman, if you could invite him up and he could just kind of go over that with us and take it from there. And thank you for Commissioner Lemkool for bringing that up and having us look at it.
Yeah, I listed 4 different items in my memo. One of the suggestions I had was simply to put in the number of votes required wherever that's known in advance. For example, if there's a 2/3 vote required, for quick reference, it's kind of nice to know that that's going to be 5, I believe now. And for the 3/4 vote required, that's 6 members. I did add a point of procedure to Rule 6.2 that all members who wish to speak on a motion subject to debate shall be permitted to speak once before any member shall be allowed to speak a second time. That's a standard right out of Robert's Rules of Order, and just something I thought of because of the way debate goes.
Sure.
Sometimes I've noticed a lot of times we'll have a back and forth between 2 commissioners, and there are other commissioners with their hands up. Rule 6.2, really just a typo where we don't have yea and nay votes, really, so just took the language out of there. And in Rule 11.5, just specifying what the legal requirement is, 3/4 vote to approve a contract between the county and any servant of the county.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that these changes be made in preparation for our January 2nd organizational meeting.
Support.
Okay, can you explain that? I mean,
That Bob would
does that
prepare-
mean you...
Bob, we would stay with our current board rules until the end of the year.
You want to pass it, but put an effective date of January 2nd?
Just have it just have Bob prepare the changes for
they're all
the
in
January 2nd organizational meeting.
He's already prepared them. The packet that's in your...
But you're gonna approve
the
it
draft that you're in
in the
here tonight.
organizational anyway.
You have to approve it, your
Bob,
organizational
did you
meeting.
make those
can't approve
changes
it
in the
now.
body?
Yeah, Chris Kramer
Okay, all right,
made
okay,
the
that's what he said.
changes, and so what's in your packet is what you'd be approving.
All right, then I would just...
But doesn't the new county commission approve the rules?
Yeah, I would just
At the
ask that
organizational meeting?
I would just ask that this be deferred to the January 2nd organizational meeting.
Okay, I don't think, that's not even a
Well,
motion, that's
what
just...
set of rules do they use to adopt these rules? You know what I'm saying?
On our organizational meeting.
Do you need a 2/3 of 9 people to adopt the 2/3? You know what I'm
The
saying?
board rules do address amending the rules, and that's just a majority.
Okay.
Happened at the organizational meeting.
So if they don't have enough votes in that meeting, they'll have to amend their rules.
The board can amend at any time, so you could amend the rules now in anticipation of January 2nd, but obviously, as soon as the new board takes
I just see what Larry was getting
takes
at.
over, they could change the rules as they've done in the past at the organizational meeting.
Okay, so we're just going to wait till the organizational meeting?
They just defer to the January 2nd meeting. That'd be the
I
motion.
won't be there. Have fun, Dick.
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
Or right, do I have a second to that motion? Support. By Fleece, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thanks, Bob, for your help on that.
All right, that brings us now to second general public comment. Anyone wishing to make public comment at this time, just come on up to the table.
I am Lisa Leedy. I am the newly elected village president of Fife Lake, and I just came to introduce myself in the new role, and I haven't met Mr. Benda yet, so I came to say hello, and I also would like to comment on the title changes of representation. I'd like to express my appreciation for the commissioners, for all of you, for considering this and for putting so much thought into it. I think it's a good representation for the public, and as the former board president of the library, this was very important to us to get some representation spread out throughout the county. I think this sends a good message to the people that you're interested in hearing voices from all parts of the county. I would also like to invite you Saturday to Fife Lake for our open house. We have a community open house, or anytime in Fife Lake.
Just Fife Lake Village.
Yep, the Fife Lake Village. The library is actually included in that, but it's actually being kicked off by one of our anchor institutions in Fife Lake of the American Legion at noon, and it's an open house all through town. And just for those of you who have not been to Fife Lake ever and gotten out of your car, or who have not been there recently, you will be pleasantly surprised, I think, if you come.
They did a nice street job.
We've had a lot of positive changes. We've got new business owners. We've got some things happening, so I'd like to welcome you all and come visit.
Good job, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa, for coming to the meeting.
Could you, just for purposes of the minutes, would you spell your last name?
It's Leedy, and I live at 125 Morgan Street.
Thank you very much.
And she is the
Lisa,
president of the Fife Lake
you're
Village.
tongue-in-cheek about, for commissioners that may not know where Fife Lake was. My first year as a commissioner, we used to travel to different townships, and there came a time when we went to Fife Lake early on, and we did have a board member that didn't know where Fife Lake was.
Well, the Tattle Board actually does have one of their meetings at each location each year they go to each location and visit. So that would be something to consider for the Board of Commissioners.
We used to go to
If
all
you
the
ever have an
townships.
opportunity, and if you'd like to, I'm sure we would be happy to host an event either at the township or the village, so.
Great. Thanks for coming to the meeting, Lisa.
I understand there's no speed law enforcement over there?
Is there any other public comment?
You better talk to Nate about that.
Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Commissioner committee reports, Herb?
Yeah, I have a couple. Monday night is a public hearing at the Civic Center at 6 o'clock for the Parks and Recreation, their plan for what they're going forward, so I would hope that everybody would show up for that. Also, in the paper on Sunday was a notice of opportunity to comment before the Michigan Public Service Commission, a community access line of the Lake Shore for assignment of 3-digit 211 for the communities of the five different counties in our area. So that public comment is open between now and December 3rd, I think it is. But anyway, so we're coming on. We also received a $40,000 grant from Rotary to implement this 211 process.
It couldn't have closed December 3rd. Today's the 12th.
Excuse me, January. I'm sorry, January 4th. So up until the 4th of January. So anyway, 211 is coming along very well, and we really appreciate everybody's pushing on this, and third level is going to be the call center for that, for nights and weekends. The other thing I'd like to make comment is that there is going to be a flag dedication ceremony at the Reigning Liberty Ranch, which is the old Windermere Farms. This is a veterans organization of loosely knit veterans that have come together to provide a drop-in center for veterans, for their families, for horses. They'll have horses there, they'll have chickens, they'll have gardens, they'll have a place where they can just sit back and just do nothing if they want to, but it's a place they can bring their families. And I'm really excited to see how people are coming together, and I really want to thank Coast Guard Base Traverse City for all the help that they've done. They did come in and help redo the roof, part of the roof on the barn. The volunteer group of people that come out there and did painting and cleaning. is just very, very much appreciative. The other day I was out there, and they were going to receive about 250 bales of hay, and the Coast Guard people, all the people that worked at the Coast Guard were out there to help them do that. And somebody from the Fresh Fruit Partnership dropped off food for them to be able to have, because they knew there was quite a big group. And it's just showing how the community is really coming together and really supporting this. So veterans, you got a place to be able to go just for you. And you just have to be feeling really welcome when you get there. It's amazing what they're doing.
In the location?
That's the old Windermere Farms on Silver Pines Road.
Silver Pines Road.
Between East Silver Lake Road and McRae Hill Road.
Well, Peninsula Township, of course, was there last night, and much of the discussion was of course, the stormwater ordinance, which they pretty much said, okay, well, we'll just kind of move along. We're not going to do anything. We're going to defer anything until they hear what we're going to do, which who knows what that's going to mean to them going forward. The only other thing that they mentioned, they were talking about increasing their capacity and potentially moving out some of their sewer capacity. But there is some room, I guess, in the system, and they might take advantage of it. They're being approached. So.
Good.
I would suspect that tomorrow morning at the BPW meeting, that we're going to talk about raising the rates to 18 cents a gallon for septage.
Oh, no.
Everybody show up, please. And it will pass.
Not me.
It will pass. The votes are there to make it happen. I don't think it's the answer, but I'm only one vote. But anyway, that's 9 o'clock in the morning.
If we show up, do we have to be civil?
Any other committee reports? Any notices or announcements? Okay, and I guess we do have a closed session, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what is the purpose of the...
Do we have a specific... Mr. Chairman, I would move to go in closed session to discuss with our
For
council...
the purpose of?
For the purpose of discussing with our council the Jetter case.
Pending litigation.
And pending litigation.
Support?
Okay, I have a motion support for going to closed session by roll call, please.
Commissioner Gilman?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Lemkool?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Please?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Richardson?
Yes, and...
Chris, do we expect action on this?
We have... No. Okay, so we will be back, obviously, to adjourn, but we're not expecting to take any action.
Okay.
I see Herbie on TV tonight down on 12th Street holding out his sign.
About the library.